Hey guys, I'm Matt. Welcome back to Pleasant Prairie Farms. Today I wanted to do a Sump 101. I've talked about sumps before on this channel. You've seen my old sump in some of the videos that I had on my 220-gallon tank. It was a rather large sump, and there is a lot I liked about that sump, and there's a lot I disliked about that sump. And with this one, I made some changes. Obviously, it's a much smaller scale, but ideally, if I had had a single tank to do the sump on the 220, this is how I probably would have designed it. Going back and looking on what I wanted to change about it, this is kind of the updated version of what I, wanted. And I learned a lot from that last one, and that was really great, but I definitely needed to change a few things around for my particular system. Now, everyone has their own way of doing sumps. Just as many tanks as there are, you can go and look and there's just as many sumps out there. So it's really up to the owner what kind of tank they want, what they're looking to get out of the sump, what they want to achieve inside the sump. And it really does vary on the tank you want. It varies on the corals you intend to keep, on how many fish you want to keep, on what kind of sump you want to build, and of course your space. Now, I by default always try and go with kind of the biggest sump I can. I'm not necessarily saying it's 100% necessary to go with a huge sump. A lot of times you can get away with a very tight sump, a very tiny sump. But in my mind, it adds a little bit extra water volume, especially if you're doing a smaller tank. If you're doing a bigger tank, it's not as important to have that sump volume unless you're doing some really specific stuff like a big refugium or something like that. But on smaller tanks, I try and go with a bigger sump just to kind of offset not only more total water volume, but also to give me more space to work with bigger equipment. So that's always a challenge, to get the biggest sump you can to fit in the smallest space underneath a tank and to house the best equipment. So without getting too much into that, tank specifics, let me show you the sump that I built and why I built it and how it works. Now, this is just a standard 20-gallon long aquarium that you can buy at Petco or PetSmart. I always buy them at Petco when they're on their dollar per gallon sale. So this was $20. That's what the tank cost me right out the bat, which is a pretty decent price. Most of the time, if you can't get it while it's on a dollar per gallon sale, I think they're normally like $39 or something. So you're paying $40 for a sump, which isn't the greatest. You can definitely get better if you shop around on Craigslist or what have you. If you don't mind fixing up a tank or you don't mind shopping around, go the Craigslist route. But I always like to get them new and at Petco. So that's what I did. I bought this one, like I said, at Petco. The glass inserts actually came off of a 10-gallon tank that was broken that I had laying around. So I just scrapped it and cut the pieces out, which I would not suggest doing, simply because it was a humongous pain to cut these black strips off here. I don't know what adhesive they use at the factory to attach those with, but it is a bugger to get them off, and if you're not safe or you're accident prone like I am, you will cut yourself, which I did. I lacerated, this was months ago when I got the inserts out, but I lacerated my hand right here because I thought I was past the point of needing gloves, and a piece of glass shattered on me, and I just right down and cut myself on it. So definitely do not suggest taking apart old tanks with rims. It's just a bugger. It's not worth it. Go down and buy some glass. There's lots of used glass places. You can often find cheap or free glass on Craigslist that's, window panes or stuff like that, and that'll work fine as the inserts. I think this glass is like, I think it's like 1/8 of an inch or something like that. It's not very thick. If you build your sump right, there's not going to be hardly any pressure on those panes in the first place, so you don't have to worry about super thick glass. If you have thick glass, it doesn't matter. Use that. Whatever glass you have laying around usually works. I don't like going too much thinner than an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch is really nice thing to shoot for there. But whatever you can get is what you can get. So, and then I've just used standard epoxy to put the inserts in. You can buy it at Home Depot. That's where I get it. It's 100% acrylic epoxy. You're not going to find anything on the tube that says safe for aquariums or anything like that, but it's what I've always used, and it's never had any bad effects. So don't bother going down to the pet shops and buying that stuff in a tube that they sell. It's the aquarium safe acrylic. It's the same stupid stuff that they have at the Home Depot for twice the size and for like $3 or something, and a tube will, do the whole thing. Which, speaking of that, I also always seal extra around the corners of my sumps, just an added precaution that I like to do after I've had a few of them over time crack. So those are just a few tips on that. Now, why have I designed it this way? Well, on my old tank, or on my old sump design, I had designed it so the water flowed in to one chamber, or one tank, and then flowed out of that into the refugium, half into the refugium, and half out to the last tank, which was which had my skimmer and my return pump in. Now, I found that I didn't like that for two reasons. First of all, I thought that I was going to be filtering out all the good particles from the tank if I put the skimmer in the first chamber. I thought it wouldn't get any nutrients to the refugium, which is, my bad on not realizing quite how much nutrients is, not taken out by a skimmer in the first place, and how much of it is so microscopic in the water, you'll never take it out with a skimmer in the first place. So there's plenty of food getting to your refugium. So the first thing I did was decide that the first chamber of my sump, my new one, was going to have the skimmer in it, because I found it was just a huge pain. A lot of detritus would build up in the rest of the tank, chunks and everything, and it was a huge pain in the neck trying to clean it out and everything. And I realized if I put the skimmer in the first chamber of the sump, it would have got first shot at pulling that stuff out of there, and I never would have had to deal with it. So my first piece of advice is skimmer, if you can, in your first chamber. Or at least, if you can't put it in your first chamber, don't put anything in your first chamber that's going to trap detritus, okay? Put the skimmer in your second chamber or whatever, but don't put anything between it and the skimmer that you can't clean easily, because it will collect detritus and it will be a pain. So the first chamber here is sealed all the way to the bottom. You can't quite see it because the rim here, but it goes all the way to the bottom. It comes up to about 1.5 inches below the surface. Now, why 1.5 inches below the surface instead of just, a little tiny lip? It's simple. I calculated that in my, I was going to, at the time when I built this, I was going to use a 40-gallon breeder, which I may still use that for my new tank, but we'll see. But I calculated that the surface area in the 40-gallon breeder between where the overflow is and where the water would have to drop to get past that overflow, or below that overflow, so it would stop flowing down into the sump, was X amount of gallons. So what I did here was then I calculated how many X amount of gallons that would drop, and how many X amount of inches that drop would fill up the sump. And it didn't fill it up, I think maybe to about here was all, which I always try and leave mine at least 1 inch to 1/2 inch lower than wherever that water will stop flowing into the sump, just for safety, so you don't end up with an overflow if for some reason your return pump stops or something malfunctions. Because last thing you want is this to start overflowing in the bottom of your stand. So always put the inserts at a lower position than whatever your tank, your sump can handle. It takes a little bit of math, but it's well worth it in the long run. So basically the water's going to drop into this chamber here. Okay, I haven't decided whether I'm going to put a small filter sock in here to catch the detritus, or if I'm just going to let it go in here. Probably just let it go in here. But so it's going to go in here. The skimmer is in this chamber, so skimmer runs it through, and what I've also got in this chamber is my block of ceramic media that will provide basically almost all of the micro filtering that needs done in this tank. I don't intend on having a huge tank, so that block is more than enough to handle it. Then I have my middle chamber here, which is probably going to be some sort of refugium / pod farm. I haven't decided yet, but that's what that chamber's for. So the water flows over the top here and then drops down. So what I've done is I've taken this next piece and I've held it off the bottom, the same distance that is from the bottom, so it's like 1.5 inches or something like that, which there is a mathematical formula you can do to figure out how many gallons can flow through a set space. And I did that at the time. So I figured on if I wanted to have it 10 times, people say have your sump flowing 10 times the amount of the tank every hour. So that's kind of your return rate. I don't like going that fast, but I did put these far enough apart that if I did have 10 times the amount of water of my tank pushing through this area in that hour or whatever it is, that it could flow through there without getting stopped up and overflowing over the top. Which you can't see again because of the rim, but I did leave again a space at the top, a very small one, so in case it ever did back up, it could just flow to the top instead of overflowing my tank. So it goes under here. The idea is the water comes back up and then back down again. This one's all the way sealed to the bottom. Comes back down again and flows into the return chamber. Now, why did I do all this instead of just having 2 overflows or just leaving the entire tank open? Well, it's simple. I'm forcing the water to first circulate in this area, which gives it time to be cleaned by the skimmer. It then flows over that area, and it slows, presumably, it slows down the flow enough to go into my refugium area, which is a little bit lower flow, so things aren't just getting pushed all over the place. And then it forces the water to go down. Now what this does, water is always going to take the path of least resistance. So if you have only top overflows, it's just going to go over the top. And it's going to not circulate that water down in the bottom here. I mean, a little bit of it circulated, but not near enough. So you're going to have like this stagnant water area down here in the bottom of your tank. So what we're doing is forcing it to get sucked down, and then back up, and then back down again. And that just, again, it slows the water down a little bit so the return pump doesn't get overrun. It kind of calms the water down. Really, the purpose of this is also to get out a lot of the bubbles. Micro bubbles are a huge pain if they're getting sucked back into your return pump and they get spit in your tank and chopped up, and it's like looking at a snow globe. So you want to try and avoid that, and that's why I have 3 of these. So obviously it comes back down here and then into the return pump chamber. Now this return pump chamber is huge. I have a pretty decent sized pump, but I could also pack more live rock in here. I could put, some corals in here with a little light if I wanted to, have some frags or something, so it's just a big section. So that's my basic principle for a sump. It's really simple to build. I mean, from start to finish, not including, dry time for your sealants and everything, but from start to finish, cutting these glass chunks, especially if you're not cutting them out of an old aquarium, you just have glass laying around, or you go get some glass squares from your shop. Start to finish, the whole sump is probably going to take you about 2 hours to complete. And that's, really quick and easy. It's not a lot of difficult stuff going on here. It's pretty easy to understand. I always try and leave space between these large enough to get my hand down. Now, if you're a bigger person than me, I have pretty skinny hands. But if you're a bigger person than me, you have to leave more space if that's what you want to do. But I always try and leave them there so I can unclog something, or I can clean the glass, or what have you. So that's why I leave that like that. Again, always leave it from the top far enough that it's not going to overflow. It's very important. If you've ever had a tank overflow, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's not fun all the way around, especially if it's in a stand, and now your stands, if the wood stands all over your wood, it's just not fun. So that's the simple basic principle, and really you could blow this up to whatever size you want. It could be a 100-gallon sump, and this same basic design would work for you. That's what I like about it. It's a really simple design. I don't know if it actually has a name or not. It's just kind of what I threw together from some other people's sumps that I've seen, and from what I realized I wanted to work with. And it just is a nice, easy, clean design that total cost to me, if I took into account the fact that I'd have to buy the glass, you're probably looking at around $35, which is really great for a sump when you can consider that you could go buy, a really fancy acrylic one that the same volume or whatever, and it cost you, upwards of $200. So that's what I was looking for was, obviously with all my stuff, I always look for cheap, well-built, well-designed, easy to clean, easy to access, easy to work with plenty of space, large spaces that aren't tight and that I don't have to build weird stuff to fit in. So that's what I've built. Hopefully it'll give you some ideas for sumps, or if you wanted to build one just like this, more power to you. I'd love to see it if you did. I'd love to see your ideas on maybe things you've tried in the past, or questions about sumps, or anything really. Just leave a comment, or I'll try and get back to you and see what we can come up with. Or if you have an idea for the tank, I'd love to hear it. I always love hearing ideas. So that's what I built. And, I like the main tank. Don't get me wrong, main tank's a lot of fun. But that sump is the guts of your system, and if it's not easy to work with, if it's not fun to work with, if it's not easy to clean, easy to access, you're not going to do it. You know, that's the whole key with saltwater tanks, is making things easy to access, easy to do, and then you'll do it. Otherwise, you'll put it off, and next thing you know, everything's dying in the tank. So that's what I like to do. These are really the guts of your system. You know, this is the engine of your car. This is going to be the driving force behind your epic reef. And it's an important step to, you know, really plan out what you want in a sump. So I encourage you to do research on, you know, what kind of corals you want, and based on that, then go look at what people are doing tank-wise. You know, there's Pinterest, there's YouTube, anywhere on the internet, you know, there's 1,000 places you can go look at sumps, and everyone has cool different designs, and you can pick and pull pieces. And that's what's really cool about designing your own, is that it's ultimately customizable. You know, and nothing says that you can't turn off your tank and pull this out and add something to it. That's what's really cool about building your own. So that's why I'm a big fan of building your own and doing it DIY and on the cheap. You know, cheap tank, cheap sump, but really great results. So thanks for watching, guys. Next video is probably going to be on some of the equipment that I like in a sump, some of the different things that I enjoy fitting in there, things that I think make for a very successful reef, and things that I think you should look out for, and pitfalls that I've fallen into, so hopefully I can help you avoid them. So thanks for watching again, guys, and hope it helped.